Welcome back to Unhinged Curiosity with your host, Benji Halden. I just want to take a quick minute to apologize for the quality of last week's episode. One of the issues that I've got with running a podcast on my own is that I'm trying to, focus on my face myself. And sometimes that is not easy. So we were slightly out of focus last week. So I do apologize for that. It's something that I'm always trying to make better with each episode. But moving on, that was a bit of a pain in the arse. This week, we are going to be talking about dealing with pain. And speaking about pain is very common because if there's anything that me and you've got in common, it's that we've all had pain, been through pain, maybe even going through pain, or go through pain in the future or right now, and that will endure some kind of physical or emotional pain, which is what I want to explore today. And sometimes this can be triggered by different things. Sometimes this can be triggered by a broken leg. Sometimes it can be triggered by a loss. Sometimes it can be triggered by a broken heart. Sometimes it can be triggered by change. And sometimes it can be triggered by nothing at all. And these are some of the things that we will look into further today when we're looking at how does the body, the brain, how do we deal with pain? It's something that I've been really interested in recently, and it's something that I've been doing more reading around, and it's something that I've had to think about a lot, especially over the past year. And it's one of those things that in life, it's unavoidable. It doesn't matter how fit you are, how much money you have, how much respect, authority, how much of a following that you have. We all endure pain, and there's nothing really that can metaphorically wrap us in cotton wool. And we all must go through it. But I think it's often how we perceive it that can really either cause change, make that pain feel less intense, or make it feel like it doesn't last for us as long. And it's how we move past that initial experience that I guess really helps us move forward through that pain. And I think one of the things I really recognize that when I've been through different periods of pain, whether it's been emotional mainly or something physical, you really have to understand that with life, you're not going to be as productive as usual. I remember that was the first thing that someone said to me last year, is when you're going through a period of some kind of pain, that you've got to lower your expectations of what you're going to be able to, one, deal with, and two, be able to put out. So my usual output is pretty high, and depending on what your standard is, was going to depend on where your productivity is. But I think the thing that some people get wrong is that they believe that when they experience some kind of pain or loss or heartbreak, is that they kind of are going to just be maintaining through the pace or the trajectory that you've been moving at for the past however long. But actually what tends to happen is that you regress with your productivity, you regress with your progress, and you come on this downward slope. However, what happens is that downward slope can't last forever. What usually then happens is we hit this point where we don't regress anymore. We actually get a bounce back, and we bounce back up, and the trajectory starts moving forward at a certain pace again. And then often what happens off the back of that is that our progress actually moves past the point in which we were moving before. So sometimes it can be the pain that helps us move forward past the point of what we believed we were actually capable of, because it changes the way that we wire our brain. It changes our experiences. And this is a big thing of why pain isn't always a bad thing. It's actually, it can be our ally, it can be our friend. And I'm going to talk about that more into today's podcast. And I think, definitely. I think for me, if I wanted to, gather the Avengers of humanity, I would want all of them to have gone through some kind of pain, because pain is what forms us, it's what makes us. It makes us stronger. It makes us more equipped to be able to deal with things. And that's one of the things I guess I'm also worried about with my generation, the younger generation, is that if they never get to go through anything, if they're constantly stuck behind screens and phones and technology, and don't experience pain or any real pain, I'm worried about what will happen when they experience real pain, such as loss, grieving, illness, losing finances, changes in lifestyle, it does worry me. And that's why I would really choose a team of individuals who have been through things, who've got battle wounds, who've got scars, who've been through emotional pain, because I think it definitely makes you a more well-equipped individual and human being. I think I was thinking about this week, and I put it in my Instagram broadcast group, and I think this is just put beautifully. And the thing that you've got to remember is that just because you put a dark cloth over a light doesn't mean that that light has gone out. The light is still illuminated underneath the cloth, and you are that light bulb. The dark cloth is simply regrets, stress, heartbreak, some kind of pain that you're going through, but you have the ability to remove that cloth at any point. You're the individual who gives weight to those problems and those experiences. You have to just be well equipped enough to then realize and be self-aware of how long you're enduring that and how long you're dragging yourself through it. Because when you remove that dark cloth, then you will shine brighter than ever. That's one of the things that I think about now when I'm maybe, even if it's having a shit day, you have one of those shit days, maybe it's not a dark cloth that's been thrown over you, but it's definitely a grey cloud. And I always lean into, the tattoo that I've got on the top of my shoulder, and it's two swallows, which are the sign of the birds of positivity going into a brain, which is strange, but you'd have to see it to really understand what it looks like. And that was because it was from Mo Gawdat's happiness equation of, really simply, how we can't hold two opposing thoughts. So you can't be happy and sad at the same time. I was actually having a similar conversation today with Ollie, my flatmate, in the gym about, we were just laughing for no reason. And we just had a bit of one of those days. I said, look how quickly our mood has changed because we're just laughing. Because we can't be sad and laughing at the same time. It just doesn't go hand in hand. So that's why sometimes I am a fan of fake positivity as well. Because if you can fake it to make yourself feel good, because it makes you forget about the pain or the sadness, and that's a win in my books. So I think that's one of the things that viewing yourself as a light and you're just being covered up sometimes helps create self-awareness with what you're really doing. But I do want to touch on physical pain today, and then we'll go into a bit of emotional pain stuff as well. I know that people, have different things that they might be dealing with right now. It might be something that you've dealt with in the past. And it might be just equipping you for something that you've got to deal with in the future. Because I really want to go down that rabbit hole of the emotional and psychological pain, because I think that one's the one that often is most intense for people and definitely lasts the longest. Because, if you hit your head on a cupboard, like, that hurts for maybe 2 minutes and then it's gone, right? If you break your leg, maybe, it hurts for a couple of weeks and then it's an inconvenience for a couple of months. But with your mental health, with your emotional health, losing someone, if you allow it to, it can feel like it lasts a hell of a lot longer. And there was just a quote that I pulled up. This was from a consumer poll, and it was that when looking at a timeline of breakups, many sites refer to a study that actually was conducted by the consumer poll, a market research company conducted on behalf of Yelp. And the poll results suggest it takes an average of about 3.5 months to heal, while recovering after divorce takes closer to 1.5 years, if not longer. So this just goes to show how long, loss or heartbreak or whatever emotional pain you might be holding on to can last if we allow it to. And how much longer and how much deeper it can hurt us than just a cut or a scar. But pain is our learning system for survival, and this is why it does it, because, fire, hot, knee, hurting after being for a long run, probably done too much. It's a warning signal. It's a way of telling us, we've either done too much or we shouldn't touch that, we shouldn't do that. And that's what pain is there for us. When I'm saying at the start of the podcast, pain is actually our friend. And I think the issue for a lot of people is that they believe they need to be completely pain free all the time, both physically and emotionally. And that's never going to happen. I think there's this notion that I see a lot on TikTok. I see, you shouldn't be getting into other relationships unless, you've done the healing and you've done the work. Well, people aren't ever going to be fully healed, and people can only show up as the best versions of themselves. I definitely believe that people should do the work to become the best version that they can be in order to heal their emotional pain, to make sure that they're giving the best version of themselves to somebody else. But I don't think you can be completely pain-free. I think there's got to be a point in which you enter back into the dating pool, or you enter back into a relationship knowing that you've probably still got work to do. As long as you're self-aware of that and you're still doing the work, then I think that's a good enough reason. That's a good enough situation for you to be able to move back into that place, because I don't think we can ever get to a point where we're completely pain-free. It's just part of human nature. The most interesting thing though about this is I was doing a bit of research around pain, and for different types of pain, sometimes we'll use pills, sometimes we'll use distractions, and we do the same thing with pleasure. I was mentioning this in, I think, the end of last week's episode when it came to, especially with men, distractions from purpose being pleasure in the form of porn and masturbation and other things like that. But there's ways in which we can distract ourselves from pain as well in the same way, but in much more positive light. This is often a way that clinical psychologists will help people remove emotional pain, is by the real simple things of distractions, such as spending time with friends, spending time with family, going on a walk, doing things that release dopamine that are going to make you feel good about yourself and distract you from that constant barrage that is peppering your brain. And the way that pain happens and is connected is due to connections in the brain, from fear, control. It goes to the decision switchboard, and most of all, what happens then is that we feel what we expect to feel. And I was trying to think of how to best summarize this, of what this piece of research says was what you feel is what you expect to feel. And the way that I thought about it was with evidence of how has this happened in my life. And the thing that came to immediately is, when there's two different types of pain, or there's two different types of pain that you feel from a punch. There's a punch that you get from a friend, and there's a punch that you get from an enemy. And the punch from the enemy always hurts way more. It doesn't matter how hard it is. It's because you don't want it. Maybe, when you're with a friend and they punch you and it's a friendly punch, it still hurts, but you lap it off and let it go because it's your mate that's just hit you and there's no malice or intention there. When you get hit by somebody else, somebody you don't know, maybe someone you don't like, hurts a hell of a lot more. And I guess that's kind of the way that I summarized, and the way that I sort of mentally thought about the way that we can expect to feel pain, and how expectations can also impact the severity of pain that we feel in a physical sense, or also in an emotional sense as well. And you can even apply this in an emotional sense, I guess, as well. So, for example, the other thing that I wrote down was, the old one of, she won't text back or he won't text back. So then you feel rage and anger and sadness, and then bing, you get a text back. She being at the shops with her mum and phones being out of battery. You get immediate relief in pain and in panic. And I guess that's probably the emotional analogy I thought of when I was thinking of the emotional pain from expectations. How quickly pain can be gone from just, I guess, reassurance. It's always believed that the more severe an injury was, the more the pain we would feel. So, for example, if someone gets stabbed in the back versus gets slapped in the face, we would deem the dude who got stabbed in the back to be in way, way, way more pain. That would just be logical thought. But it seems that tissue damage and the amount of pain don't actually always correlate, because pain is also based on our beliefs, previous experiences, and our emotional state. And I'm sure a lot of you can probably think back to a time where you were in a pretty shitty place, where your emotional state was pretty bad, and you're just way more vulnerable. If someone says something, if someone upsets you, if someone does something that usually you would just, water off a duck's back, it tends to sit with you a lot longer. It tends to sieve through your brain and cause you to be more upset or more angry than you would usually be. And that's just because of your emotional state. Now, there's another part of this called, I'm going to try not butcher this word, nociception. And it's part of the central nervous system protective response to potentially harmful things. So if sensors are activated, it signals the brain, which then signals to the brain and then to pain. It says, we're in pain, to stop us from having more damage. That's the indicator of pain. It stops us from getting more damage. So for example, you put your hand in the fire, ow, it hurts, but it hurts to stop you from being in more pain and you from scalding your hand and having burns for the rest of your life. So that's the kind of protector, how pain's protecting us, and that's what the nociception does basically. And this was a really interesting story that I saw, and it was about a builder that I think who had put a full nail through, or he'd either stood on a nail or he put a full nail through his boot. And the ambulance came, picked him up because he put this big nail, it gone all the way through the rubber, all the way through his foot, and it was popping out the top of the boot. And they put him in the back of the ambulance, and all the way through the ambulance, every bump they went over, every turn that they made, the builder was screaming in pain because it was just so severe. And when they got into the hospital, they removed the nail, they removed the boot, and when they looked at his foot, there wasn't even a hole in his foot. The nail had gone straight through his boot, straight through the rubber and come out the other side, but hadn't even pierced his foot. It was the perception of the pain that was causing him to be in emotional distress and physical pain. And that's how perceptions and expectations can actually have an impact for some people on how they can physically be in pain. I think there's some things around it with when women are in labor and their husbands are there, they can sometimes feel some sort of physical pain, which is super, super interesting. And I guess something I need to look a little bit more into. Maybe one day I may be sitting in that kind of pain. But I guess this comes back to one of the things I thought about quite a lot. And I thought about this when I was running last year. And I thought about it a little bit when I was running this year as well. And it's a difference between chosen pain and involuntary pain. So there's a study on this done on, I guess it's not exact to what I'm talking about, but the study done on children where they looked at perceived pain, and the children who thought that they had control over pain versus a group who thought they had no control over the pain. And the conclusion was that those who had controlled over perceived pain tend to experience or thought that the pain would be less. So I guess this is where, you might think tough guy because you enter a fight or you do an Ironman or you do a High Rocks. But until you go through something where you haven't ended it yourself, heartbreak, death, illness, real pain that changes you, not like just jumping in an ice bath, you get to choose to do that. That's not, I saw the most cringy TikTok post the other day of some dude, I think he was playing Viking music and it was all about relation to his ancestors going out to war when he was going out the fucking High Rocks gate. And this is the type of thing that I'm talking about, when you have no idea what real pain is until you've experienced involuntary pain that you didn't choose. And that's the pain that I think really shapes us because there's no escaping it. You've chosen to be in pain. You can pull out the race. You can jump out the ice bath. You can get off the bike. You can stop the run anytime that you choose. But those are the types of pain. They're real pain. People go through that all the time, and it is definitely not easy. One of the other things which is super interesting with this, that I actually saw Andrew Huberman about 2 years ago, and at least brought people's attention to something that's known as the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, part of the brain. And it's now thought to be the hub of willpower. So when you do extra work on top of, whether it be admin or creative work or physical work on top of your usual weekly load, then it's got to be work that you didn't want to do. It's not like, I'm playing a PlayStation game on class night as well. I'm going to do more of it. So my mid cingulate cortex is going to grow bigger because I'm creaming people on FIFA 26 or whatever's out at the moment. It's got to be something that has some resistance to it, something that you don't choose, or something that is hard, or you're going to endure some kind of pain with it. And what they actually found was that that part of the brain was smaller in obese people until they dieted. And when they dieted, it actually got bigger as they dieted and resisted from eating something that they really wanted. I thought that was really interesting. They also found that this part of the brain was a lot bigger in athletes and endurance athletes who have to put themselves through big training blocks and endure more volume and endure more challenge and endure more pain as they go through them as well. So I thought that was super interesting about just the impact that pain can have on parts of the brain in terms of actually making those parts of the brain grow. And this is why I'm saying, again, relating to the start of the podcast, how pain is our ally and pain is our friend. Not only does it help us in the sense of our experiences and how we then perceive pain in the future, but it's actually making parts of the body grow. That's in making the brain and the connections change. I think the more I think about it, which I'll discuss at the end, the more this relationship with pain can be a good and a bad thing. So, pain is your friend. Sometimes it fucks with you. Sometimes, power over pain is possible. Sometimes it's not. Even in the aspect of, I think it's good going through even painful jobs or jobs that you don't want to do, because it can create a bit of a soundboard. The stuff that I do now, I love, but then some days I can be like, oh, I can't bother doing that today. Or it's a bit monotonous. And I think back to the job which I had in the police, and this is again nothing and no shade on people who work in the police or police officers and love their jobs. It just wasn't for me. Didn't work for me, and especially the people I was working with, it just caused me extreme stress and extreme anxiety for a long period of time. And I think back to those periods now and how I wouldn't want to be back there. And that keeps me moving forward and have great gratitude with the job that I get to do now on a day-to-day basis. And again, Mo Gaudet terms is downwards gratitude. You can look back on things that when you went in such a great place and to where you are now, it really makes you content. And this is, again, aligning back to the whole ethos of the thing that I wanted to explore with this podcast, was the balance between being content and self-development. That is a big help. Is gratitude and the downwards gratitude. So I think I think all people should go through a job which is potentially that you don't want before you find the one, because then it just gives you great context and it gives you a soundboard and a metric stick to be able to use that on those days where you're thinking, oh, I can't bother doing this today. You think, remember when I had that shit job where I had to sit next to Stacey and work, and she send me all the stuff I she didn't want to do, and she lazy and didn't do it, and she bitches about me and caused me stress, whatever it may be. Or I remember when I had that paper round and I was sweating my tripes off for an hour straight for £3.50 an hour. That was a true story. And I just think I'm so lucky to be able to do what I do now. And I'm really grateful for the things that I got to do with the shitty jobs that I got to do, because they give me great respect. And I think where you come from definitely helps in your mindset, whether it be with people, definitely with money, whether that's in a good or a bad way. And this is why I say, going slightly off topic, that there's great value in the way that you earn money. Great value. And I say this because I've been having discussions with people about OnlyFans creators and the way that they earn money. And even, I guess you can relate it to drug dealers. Like, how you earn money has a great impact on how you value it, your perception of the world, and how you respect yourself. And that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, I think it definitely makes me respect what I do now, and going through shit jobs is important. And I worry for people who have never had a job before and just become straight into social media, and it's still a job, but you've never had any experience before that. What do you do afterwards? You've gone straight from maybe college or school, and now the road to what you deem to be success is to be an influencer. I guess you need to just forward think with it. Same with the years of the football players who got great money, but then afterwards didn't know what to do. They hadn't really invested the money very well. They hadn't saved very well. Whereas now, modern day footballers will have financial advisors who will help them string out the career for the rest of their lives and invest in things so that they have, a portfolio moving forward, or they have security moving forward. And I guess that's what people probably need to do when they're thinking, about the future from social media careers as well, because they're not always going to last forever, because there'll be someone hotter, prettier, better looking, better shape, especially in the fitness space, who will come along, and can be a cutthroat world. So yeah, I appreciate the jobs that I've had. I think painful jobs is something definitely worth going through and having some kind of soundboard with as well. Okay, so we spent a little bit of time talking about, I guess, both physical and a bit about emotional pain, but I also want to get past the cuts, the bumps, the bruises, the breaks, and start focusing on the pain, the emotional pain, how our body deals with that, because that is going to be different for everyone. I'm sure there's people who are probably listening to this podcast now who are going through some kind of emotional pain, and hopefully you'll be able to get some relatability to this, because it's the last thing I would wish upon anyone. And for anyone who's been through emotional distress or hard times, you will know what I'm talking about. How it creates a churning feeling in your stomach, how your heart rate rises, how the sweat pours, how the appetite drops, how you can't sleep, how you can't think. You know, I've had this before, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. I'm sure a lot of people have been through it, and it's such a difficult, dark place to get out of. But these are the body's way of distracting us from potentially life-threatening situations or emotions. The reason for this is because it could be life-threatening, or it would have been, at least if we think back to when we were faced thousands and thousands of years ago with rejection. Rejection's a cause of big emotional pain. If you were rejected by the in-group or as part of your tribe, and you'd essentially then cast away, you would probably die. And that's why that deep down emotional feeling of distress is what helps us from going through that life-threatening emotion, the life-threatening situation. It knows we're in danger, so it needs to do something about it. Otherwise, you probably die. Where we don't probably face that as much, but we still get the feelings of when our body and our brain feels that rejection from an individual. And that's why social rejection is probably one of the biggest causes of that emotional pain as well for a lot of people, especially when you're young. You want to be part of something, you want to fit in, you want to be part of community. So social rejection, even if it's in the workplace, can be really, really distressing time. Same with bullying in schools. So much so that there's even been studies done on the use of paracetamol. Now, this is something that I found, some people may have known this already, but this is definitely new to me, that paracetamol can be used for emotional pain. Like right now, as a disclaimer, I'm not saying that you should use paracetamol for emotional pain. I just looked into a study that paracetamol for social pain has seen like positive effects on how the brain deals with pain. Because this is the research I was looking at. So research indicates paracetamol is effective in reducing stress by minimizing anxiety and blunting emotions of fear from pain. So the pain is no longer perceived as much. That's just crazy. That I always thought paracetamol was for, a headache or general pain or a swollen ankle or inflammation, just reducing pain. But the fact that it can actually be used for social and emotional pain just goes to show how in sync and synergy that emotional and physical pain are when it comes to the body. The fact that paracetamol can be used to blunt that as well when we look at the brain. It fucking blew my mind when I was reading that today. Some people may have already known it. I don't by any means go and do it. I'm not advocating it. It was just something that I found really interesting because I guess it married for me the link between physical and emotional pain, how impactful they are on each other. Now, one of the greatest effects of our perception and how long it lasts is greatly affected by the availability of family support. That was the thing that I took from the same study, so I'll read that again. One of the greatest effects of our perception and how long pain is and how long it lasts for is greatly affected by the availability of family support. Now, I know 100% that when I've been through really painful things in my past life or previously, and even recently, that when I've got a hug off my mum, everything just goes away. I just put my arms around her, sink into my mum, and emotionally just feel like a safety blanket is just being thrown over me, and emotions are temporarily just gone of what I've been feeling. I'm sure everybody's probably felt that before when they've hugged your mum or your dad. You get that physical hug and the pain is gone. Our body actually releases endorphins, which make us feel better, and it soothes us when we hug a family member. So it actually has a physical impact when you give your mum or your dad, or a family member a hug. It physically soothes us. And that's the impact that a community or family can have on us when it comes to pain. So one of the big things when it comes to dealing with pain, and I'm going to bang on about this probably through, and you'll notice it as a big theme for the podcast, is community. That's why I'm trying to build a community with this podcast. That's why I'm trying to build a community online, not just with the men's groups that I run, but in general for everyone, men and women, is build this real strong community of where we can relate, where we can talk, we can open dialogue and have conversations like this that make us feel not alone. Because I think one of the most painful things that I've ever been through, and I guess is probably maybe one of the first losses that I went through, was when my granddad died. And my granddad was one of those individuals who is a brilliant man. He was in the Navy when he was younger. He married my nan really young. He was the life and soul of every social event. He was a proper bloke, a proper man's man. He's a proper head of the family. And he was someone that I always looked up to. He always took great interest in what I was doing. He's one of those men that when he shook your hand, you felt it. He was someone I had a lot of respect for. He's someone I looked up to for a long period of my life. And even talking about it now, the emotional pain, like it never goes. Like I can feel physical symptoms now, even in my heart and my lungs and my chest. When I speak about him, and he died probably 10 years ago, and it still hurts. And that's the thing that can happen with emotional pain. It can sit with you for a very long time. I'm sure if you probably sit there and think about times where you've been lost through loss or grief, you'll remember this pain. You'll remember how it feels. You'll remember how it felt that day. And I remember when it was just, I think it was just, I was just joining Cheshire Police for the first time. And he died on my first day at work. So it was the hardest thing ever because I was supposed to be going into this new job where I was really happy about starting as a PCSO for Cheshire Constabulary, and my granddad had just died. I had such a contrast in feelings, and I didn't tell anyone at work at first, and I think somehow word got about and they were telling me to go home, and I wouldn't go home. I didn't want to go home. I just wanted to see out this first day. And I think after 2 or 3 days into the first couple of shifts, I was driving home one day, and it just consumed my thoughts. Anyone who's been through this, you'll know what I'm talking about. You can't think about anything else. It just consumes everything within your brain, within your mind. It numbs everything else. You feel like you can't be happy. And I remember driving home and I was listening to songs. And at the time, it was a song that I'd ever seen it from Fast and Furious. It was the Fast and Furious that Brian O'Connor, I'm really sorry I can't remember the actor's name, but he just died. And there's that song that was sung at the end of the song where the two cars drive off. I remember how the song goes now. It's been without you, my friend. I'm sure people don't need me butchering the song, but it's that one. I was on the radio all the time, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was listening to that on the way home, and I pulled onto a roundabout in my brand new BMW 1 Series at the time. And it was big crash, smashed straight into the side of another driver. I just completely lost concentration. I think that's one of the things that happens when you go through pain is you become really emotional. It cuts off senses. It cuts off different types of emotions. It makes you feel numb. You can't really think about anything else outside of that thing. And again, the reason why I'm telling you this is because if you're going through it now or you've been through it, I just want people to know that you will get through it. You've got to continue to make the uncomfortable steps to get there. And like I've said before, it's like sitting in a dark tunnel, and you will feel like sitting in that dark tunnel for a bit at first. You'll feel like crying for a little bit. You'll feel like being upset for a little bit. You'll feel like you won't want to move out that dark tunnel. But eventually you will have to make the uncomfortable steps, the difficult, the painful, the stressful, the emotional things that make you move towards the light at the other side of the tunnel. And as you take more and more of them, you'll gain more evidence that you can, which will make you gain more confidence that you will. And eventually you'll make out that tunnel and you'll look back and you'll be proud of yourself that once was. And that's the way that I look at it now when I've been through these situations as well. It gives me evidence so that if anything else comes up that's difficult in life, that I can deal with it and I've got the toolbox to do so. That's what you're doing when you go through pain. I think an even more difficult thing, or just as equally difficult thing, maybe more difficult, is grieving someone that's still alive. So, if you've been through a relationship which has ended or friendship that's ended and you're really, really close to that person, you're emotionally, financially, whatever dependent you were, it's really difficult to cut those ties and you will feel a pain which is like grief. The difference is that grief may be sparked, initiated again every time you see that person's social media page or you see them put a post up or you see them put a story, which is why I think Mel Robbins talks about this. You need to go this 30 days where you cut all contact and you don't see them, you don't feel them, you don't experience them, you don't hear their voice, to really remove that imprint that it has on your brain, on your heart. And it's a really important thing to do because it's grieving someone that's still alive is one of the most difficult things ever. And it's a really difficult thing to escape because you can at any time pick up the phone and call them or message them or DM them, which is what you can't do with someone who is dead. And that is the thing that I think weighs heavily on people. Just send them a message. Just one more phone call. And it doesn't make things any easier because you're just constantly revisiting that pain. And when it comes to pain and the mental pain, the reason why it intrigues me a lot, but also worries me a lot, is because for a lot of people, that pain doesn't go away, or people don't find a way for it to go away. And when it becomes too intense to bear, some people take their own lives. And this is something that I've been around a lot within the men's mental health space and as an ambassador for Movember. And it's something that I'm a big advocate of is getting not just men, but people talking more about these sort of things and the pain and the weight that they're carrying invisibly. And like I mentioned before, the two biggest reasons of why people will then take the extra step and take their own lives instead of continuing to deal with the pain is because either one, they feel like they're a burden to somebody in their life, or two, that they feel like they lack purpose. And these are big things that we need to try and find out by talking to these people and looking for those signs. But when it comes back to, just switching back to when you're grieving someone that's still alive, well, mental pain is an exchange in currency that we pay for love. To be able to feel love. If you want to win big, then you've got to bet big. You must be able to play. You've got to go all in. And that's the compromise for wanting to be in love or wanting to feel love. There's some kind of sacrifice you've got to be made. You've got to lean in. You've got to be vulnerable. And some points in your life, you won't feel that way. So that's the kind of next thing that I want to move on to is, how do we know if we're healed? And how do we know if what we've done or what we're doing is actually working to move us from that position of pain that we're in to being out of that position? I think for me, one of the biggest things that I noticed was confidence. This is one of the biggest indicators, I think, for knowing that you've healed or you're healing or you're on that healing journey, because I even said this to my sister, it was a key indicator. I used to, when I've been through that period with my granddad, and even over the past year with the change in my life and what I've been through, before that, I used to walk into a room and fill it up. Not because I thought I was better than anybody else in the room, but because I felt I was as good as, and that I deserved to be in that room. But then you go through this pain and it robs you of all of your confidence, of your self-esteem, of your self-belief, of that invisible shield of armor that you will knowingly wear. It steals you of it all, and you're standing there naked. And that's how it feels. Because when you're naked, you feel vulnerable. You don't feel confident. You don't feel yourself, and it just strips you of everything, and you lose for a while yourself. You lose your ability to put yourself out, to have impact in the way that you want to have impact, and it's almost like you're running on empty. But when it comes back, wow, let me tell you, you come back like you're on fire, and you will be fucking unstoppable. Because when you have that knowledge with that experience of what you've been through, that for me is the essence of true confidence. And if you're going through it right now, just know that that version of you is going to come. You're going to go through that and become the most confident, resilient, and best individual that you've ever been just through going through that. And life puts you through these things for a reason, because it wants to teach you something. It wants you to learn something. This is why I say, if you're going to go through pain, you may as well learn something, because it's going to make you a better individual when you come from it. It's a little bit like, I guess, you know, that scene in The Matrix when Neo realizes that he's the one. He doesn't believe it all the way through the film. He's second guessing himself. He doesn't know what's going to happen. He can't fight the agents. He doesn't have the confidence to do it. He doesn't have the physical abilities to do it. And then at the end of the movie, he's like a fucking ninja. He starts fighting off all these agents that he's never fought before without the evidence. And he's been through it, and he wakes up and he realizes, I'm Neo, I am the one. And it feels the same when you get that confidence back and you go, I'm me again. I can feel it. I'm oozing it. People can see it. They feel your good energy as you enter a room again. You've got your energy back. And if you're in that place, it will come back, and you will be a completely different vet. You'll be Neo. You'll walk into a room and be Neo. That's all. That's the only way I can explain it. I hope that gives you some confidence with whatever you're going through. Because the other thing is, you also stop. When you've been through it, and I did it even with like my social media page, and you'll notice it with other people, is that when people are going through it, it's all that they'll talk about. And they'll talk about how sad it is, how hard it is, how difficult it is. And that's often how, you know, sometimes people will tell you how happy they are. That's another indicator. But yeah, people who are really happy won't be talking about it. They'll just be living their life and being happy. They won't be saying how happy they are. And I guess the thing that happens once you've healed and you've been through it, as another indicator for when you're looking at people, is people will talk about how they did it. People will talk about how they made it through and got to the other side. I guess hopefully how this podcast comes across today, with dealing with pain and dealing with hardship. And what you'll start to do is you'll start to give your opinion again. You start to feel confident in giving your opinion, because when you don't have that confidence, when you're going through emotional pain or some kind of pain, is you'll kind of hold yourself back. You'll be a bit more reserved. And what you'll start to do is you'll start to speak your truth again. You'll start to kind of notice that there's this realignment with your mouth and your brain, and your thoughts. You start to spit them again, and you'll speak your real truth and won't hold back on things. And you stop trying to people please and tell people what you think they want to hear, and just say yes to people because you've lost your backbone a little bit. That's another big indicator. You just become kind of a bit of a people pleaser and a yes man, and you don't sort of need those compliments anymore from people to pick you back up, which is a big thing when you're in that place. You need those metaphorical bandages from friends and family just to make you feel like you're wrapped and you're ready to go, and you've got kind of some level of support there. And you know, you won't need these podcasts anymore. You won't need the audiobooks where you listen to people how to heal and Mel Robbins, Let Them, and those kind of theories. It's still nice to listen to, because we all revisit pain, but you'll notice that you'll move past those periods, and you'll be able to deal with things a lot better. And you'll look back and go, wow. I even looked back the other day and thought about a version of Ben, a version of me from a couple of months ago, and I'm super proud of him. And that's the way that I look at it now. I'm proud of him because he was a much more resilient individual that went through a lot and came out the other side. And lots of people will do that as well, and you should be super proud of yourself when you do. But the thing that can happen sometimes is that some people will jump. They'll visit pain. They'll jump out of it straight away. They'll jump away from pain, and they'll almost become a false version of themselves because they just completely remove themselves. They're gone. And I guess people looking at me could even think maybe I did that when I moved over to Australia, but I came here to kind of face it and deal with it, because you always, by going around it, you're gonna have to come back and return to the pain at some point anyway. So you might as well try and deal with it, straight away, or as quickly as possible. And this brings me on to a story that I absolutely love, and I think if anyone's looking at how to deal with pain, this story just knock it out the park. So some people may have heard it. It's the buffalo and the cow story. Buffaloes and cows can both sense that a storm is coming when it happens. Now, the difference being, cows run away from the storm, whereas buffaloes run directly into the storm. When the cow runs away, it runs with the storm and in it, and it bears the storm for a lot longer period of time than it needs to. Whereas the buffalo is scared at first, but it endures it for a lot less time and eventually gets out. The moral of the story is that we can really prolong our suffering by hiding. We just stay in the pain by avoiding it or running away from it. Moral of the story is, be the buffalo. Go head first into the pain, deal with it head on. Deal with the same with life and problems. The problems are always going to be there no matter where you hide from. The best way to do it is go head on. Just start getting deep into them, peeling them back. Because as you make progress with them, you start to feel better and you build that evidence, that confidence again. That story for me just summarized it so well with pain. And it's one of the best things that I've thought about over the past year, is just constantly be a buffalo. Run into the pain, don't run away from it, because when you want to run away from it, it's just like being in the storm. You continue just to endure for a longer period of time, and you intensify that pain instead of just trying to push through it and find a toolkit or find people to help you through it as well. Love that one. So save that one for a rainy day. I guess then our self-perception of pain is a big thing. This is why experiences or previous experiences are important, because it gives you confidence to know that when you're going through that storm again, you can run through it. And if you do run through it, then you're going to get through it a lot quicker. You might need people, you might need other buffaloes to come with you. You might need friends and family to come with you, but you can definitely run through it with people. So again, just something to think about. Because the other thing that's difficult is, like we mentioned before, it's how do you lean into that pain when you've never experienced it before? And how do you become better at enduring pain? Is there a way for us to become better at enduring pain and dealing with pain? I guess experience is one of them, but it's probably, I think, just a volume and a feedback loop. The more pain that you endure, I guess maybe the less intense that it feels. I think it works the same with training in the gym. You know that you go in, you put yourself through some kind of physical pain for the day, you give some kind of sacrifice, you endure the pain. The next day or the next week, you're better, you're fitter, you're stronger, you're more developed, or you definitely feel less tired walking up the stairs. Whatever one it is, that's a real simple way, I guess, of the way that we endure pain, that we get better from it. And it's that volume times feedback loop. You then increase the training volume because what happens is your body becomes accustomed to dealing with that weight. So if you go in the gym and you curl the 10 kilo dumbbells and you can hit them for 9 reps the first week that you go in, but by week 2 or 3, you can now curl for 12 reps. So that same 9 reps that used to cause the pain, you've gone past that now. And if you continue to just do the 12 reps of the 10 kilo dumbbells, you probably won't grow, because you need to overload that volume. You need to overload that pain to a certain degree, and that's how you progress and get better. So that's that volume and that feedback loop, because then when you do get better, just simple behaviorism is that you're going to do it more because you're getting a positive feedback loop from it. So I guess my thought really simply would be that, how do you become better at enduring pain? You probably just have to endure more of it to a certain degree. I'm open to people's thoughts on that one. Because I guess it's probably just I probably simplified the way that exposure therapy works. Exposure therapy is just, you just expose yourself to whatever fear is. If I've got a fear of spiders, I'll go, I don't know, sit in a room full of spiders, sit next to a spider, or let a spider crawl on my hand. And then I realized that sometimes the perception of the pain is the biggest thing, because the spider wasn't even that scary in the first place. Same when we've got social anxiety, or when we're feeling certain things or ways about going to places or seeing people, or even going to a new gym that we've never been to before. We have this perception of what it's going to be like, and that's a little bit of negativity bias, which again, evolution's drilled into us, and we always think about the worst thing possible because that's probably going to save our life many, many years ago. But you go to that new gym and you go on the new machines and you feel good, the endorphin release hits, and you walk out the gym and go, I'm glad I did that. And you go a bit more and you go a bit more, and then you make friends there, and you look back a year later and think, wow, it was the best decision I ever made. Exposure therapy probably falls in with that, and happens with other things in life, happens with rejection. By default, if you're looking for a partner, the more times that you're willing to put yourself out there and expose yourself to rejection, the more chance that you've got to find a partner. Again, just that volume feedback loop of continuing to do the same things over and over and over again. Be willing to go through pain, to be willing to go through rejection. That rejection feels a little bit less, and the chances of success are a lot higher. So again, volume and feedback loop. The only issue that I wanted to talk about today, that I spoke about with a friend, Chris Griffin, on his podcast when I was over here last time I was in Australia, is being addicted to pain. The one thing I became worried about was that when I went through what was probably the hardest part, or definitely one of the hardest parts of my life over the past year, is that I feel, and I think people have given me feedback who are around me. Yeah, you guys who listen to the podcast, who may have tuned into my last podcast or watching me over social media, I think there's definitely been some transformation in myself. I feel like I've definitely become a better man. I feel like I'm definitely will become a better partner to the next person I'm a partner to. I'm, a better friend, a better son, a better brother, a better uncle, for the things that I've been through, because I've been on this journey of where I've really let into self-development. And my worry with that is that you then realize that this volume and feedback loop, that from pain comes great transformation and great evolution of yourself to a better version, like I was saying before. So my worry, even with myself, became, shit, am I going to be or get addicted to this pain? Because I get addicted to it with the gym, because I know that physically through, ripping the handles off the ski erg, or plowing my face into the floor every time I do a burpee broad jump, or when I go running and my lungs hurt, or when I'm pumping out bicep curls and I'm getting skin splitting pumps, that pain then, is the start point to change further down the line where I'm going to be better. And the same thing can happen with that emotional stuff as well. I sort of think like, shit, am I going to be putting myself in positions and situations where I know I'm going to go through some kind of emotional pain because I know I'm going to be better from it? Or am I going to prolong this period of pain because I know that I want to extend that period in which I'm really intensely progressing forward and leaning into finding out more of myself by turning that finger of responsibility into myself to things that I must change. And I felt myself becoming a different person. I knew I was a different person. I knew the way I was communicating as a different person. Even going through periods in life where I'd seen therapists before. And one of the biggest questions and take-homes that I think I mentioned on one of the other podcasts was that she asked me how I wanted to remember myself at that time. And that sparked a great interest in the way that I opened my mouth, the way that I said things, the way that I gave advice. And, it's led to me being the person I am today, which I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful for. And that's where I become worried for a lot of people moving forward, and always coming back to the underbelly of this podcast being getting the ultimate balance between self-development and being content or happiness. And this is one of the scenarios and underpinnings of why that thought process came in when I was thinking about this podcast, is because I was worried that I might become addicted to that pain, addicted to the pain of change. And this is something we spoke a little bit about in one of the other episodes when I was talking about there's a ceiling, there's a paradox where some people will go through life with they'll sit under this ceiling of where things just aren't painful enough for them to make a change. So they won't be pushed that much further out of the relationship or the career or the job or the friendship. So they just sit in this life where things are pretty shitty, but they're not shitty enough to the point where they need to make a life-changing decision. And I went through a pain which changed everything. It forced me to change everything. And you just don't know what's going to be on the other side of that pain. You know, there's going to be great change, but then you are ultimately in charge of where the trajectory of that is next. And this is why if you'll listen to this podcast right now and you're going through pain or you're going through discomfort or you're going through change and it's so uncertain, this is the first time in your life you've ever experienced this thing of being like, oh, I really don't know where I am right now. I really don't know where I'm going. I've lost my purpose. I've lost what my mission was. This was the way that life was supposed to be. I was supposed to be in a relationship. I was supposed to get married. I was supposed to have kids. I was supposed to go to this place. This fell through. If you feel lost, don't worry if you feel lost, because if you feel lost, it means that you're looking for answers. It means that you're searching for things. It means that you're about to be found. And that's a great place to be. I just want to loop back again and talk about start the podcast when I talked about how pain is our friend and it's our ally. It's a warning signal to save our lives, to save us from things, whether it be emotional, physical pain. Even now, I'm grateful for the fact that I've got a torn meniscus in my knee. So I'm sure I'll probably mention this more times than I have anything else. You probably hear it a lot more times because I'm just waiting for your unwilling sympathy to drop into the comments and wish me well for my knee. So go on, pop on in. And the reason I'm grateful for the meniscus tear is because it's made me find something that maybe I wouldn't have lent into as hard. So in the last episode, I talked about how I had the 140k bike ride this weekend. I would never do a 140k bike ride because I would have gone for a run instead. And from this 140k bike ride, I learned that my fitness is actually really good. I learned how to fuel properly with gels and carbs when I've got a really long endurance event because we were out for 6 or 7 hours. I got to see some of the most beautiful places along Australia's coast. I got to visit some beautiful coffee shops. I realized that cycling is pretty much just an eating competition. And I met some unbelievably beautiful people inside and out when I was on the bike ride. There was like 8 of us that went. And I would have never done that had I not torn meniscus. And I really fell in love with cycling. I think a lot of people fall in love with cycling through some kind of injury, but it's made me really appreciate cycling. I think it's probably something that I'll do even after I've had the surgery for the meniscus and, you know, hopefully it's fixed. I will carry on cycling because I'm really enjoying it. I've actually just signed up for a bike race, which I can't say too much about at the moment. But again, this is how pain, some sort of physical pain or injury, has now made sure that something's come into my life that maybe I wouldn't have done before that I'm now really enjoying. I'm meeting other people from it, and there's other results from that unfolded that were hidden to me before this pain came in and I guess took the blindfold off to something that I'd really enjoy in life. Even going back to, I broke my leg when I was 16 and I was playing football to a very good standard. I was probably just not good enough to be scouted for a professional team, but I had a team watching at the time when I broke my leg. And then I broke my leg and I found the gym because I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't do football. I was a football addict, played every day. And it made me find the gym, started lifting weights. And then from when I started lifting weights, I didn't really go back and play football again because I fell in love with the gym, fell in love with fitness. I fell in love with the bro sessions, the people that I met in the gym. I just enjoyed everything about it. And that then led to the career that I've had in fitness for the past 10 years. So, yeah, maybe if I hadn't have broke my leg, I would continue to pursue football even harder and, you know, failed at it at some point. And where would I have been in life? These, I think, pains injected into our lives sometimes when we need it, whether we know it or not. And I just wanted to finish this week's episode by saying, wherever you are right now, being in pain, healed from pain, or even in pain right this minute, know that you are not alone and that life is hard, but you are harder. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode and continue to tune in. It really means a lot. Wherever you are listening to the podcast, whether it be on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Please leave comments on any of the channels that you listen to. Most of all, if you've taken anything from this episode, or you even may know someone who this will really help, please share it to them. Tag me in your stories if you tune into it. Post them up, because I enjoy seeing every single one of them. And just most of all, thank you for being you. I've been Benji Haldon. You've been listening to Unhinged Curiosity. I'll see you in the next one.